We continue now at the top of Daf Mesechet and Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 48b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara was dealing with a machlokas amoraim between Abai and Rava, whether Hazmona is milsahi or not. Is Hazmona, is designation considered significant or not? And the Gemara brought a proof because the Brisa says that if you have a situation of parents, they're grieving over a son that died, and they're throwing garments into the grave, so we say that those garments are not considered prohibited. That's why it's a mitzvah upon other people to save those garments, because they're just doing that out of grief. We want to do the Hashavas Aveda of saving those garments, so it seems that Hazmona is lav milsa. It seems that Rava is correct, that just the designation that it should go with the grave is not enough to make those garments aser bahana. And the Gemara now answers, Hasa mishum mirorayu over there. Even if you hold Hazmona is milsa like Abaya, still this is not even designation. They're just doing it because of the fact that they are in pain. Rashi explains Hasa machmas mirarayu. There it's because of their bitterness, again because they're in pain. Mitoch tsaron hein osin kain. They're just doing this out of their pain. Ve'einzu Hazmona. This is not even called a designation, so it's not a question on Abaya at all. But the Gemara continues, Ihachi, if that's the case, so Hainu dekatani, how do you explain what is learned Allah on this brisa? It says, Amar Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Ba'med devarim amurim, when is this true? Shalom nagu b'mita, if it didn't touch the coffin. Aval nagu b'mita, but if the garments touch the coffin, so then asur, and then they are asur. Why are they asur if there's no designation over here? And Rashi explains, Aval nagu b'mita asur, and if it touches the coffin, then they're asur. V'imi shomer arayu, if it's just because of their pain. Lama nesarim b'negias hamita, why should it be asur just by touching the mita? And the Gemara continues, Tirgama Ula interprets as follows, B'mita hanikveres imo, we're talking about a coffin that is buried with him, to mechalvi, that it gets mixed up at tachricha hames, with the shrouds of the dead. Rashi explains, B'mita hanikveres imo shenosin oso bolikvur, we're talking here about the mita that they're carrying the body for burial. Uregilin hayu lakovra imo, and they would actually bury it together with the mace. Sometimes it was possible you would have a mita that you would not bury together with the mace. In this case, this is going to be buried together with the mace. Hilkach, therefore, even though they're doing it out of pain, still the garments become asr when they touch the coffin. And the reason for this is a din derabanan. People will get confused with the actual shrouds of the dead body. And people will then come to say that the shrouds of the dead body are mutter. But let's say we're talking about the bed which the person died in. So there we're not talking what's going to be buried with him. So there, they usually wouldn't use shrouds at that time in terms of burial shrouds. So there, it wouldn't be prohibited, these garments that they're throwing out of pain. Because it's not considered to be hazmana. It's not considered to be designation. Again, it's just because of pain. And also there's no issue of gezerah, because in this case, they're not going to get mixed up with actual burial shrouds. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here the following proof that Hazmona milsi, that Hazmona is considered significant, designation is significant like Abaya. The Brisa says, Kisha so laniach bo tefillin, if you have a bag that was made to put tefillin in, Asr laniach bo mo, so it's Asr to put money there. It was designated for tefillin, and therefore it's Asr to put in money. You see that designation is significant, again a proof to Abaya. And the Brisa continues, Hiniach bo tefillin, now if tefillin were just placed there, but there was no designation, so then Yaniach bo mo, so then money is allowed to be placed there, it's not a problem. Again, in any case, it's a proof to Abaya. The Gemara says, Eima, no, what you should say is, what the Brisa really means is, Aso, if it was designated Vihiniach bo tefillin, and also tefillin were placed in it, so then Asr laniach bo mos, then it's Asr to put money there, Kidder Rav Chisda, like Rav Chisda. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here a proof, this is a proof to Rava, that Hazmona lav milsi, that designation is not significant. The Brisa says, Amar lu'uman ase li tikshel sefer, let's say he says to a craftsman, make for me a cover for a sefer Torah, or nar tikshel tefillin, or a bag for tefillin. If you still haven't used it for that holy purpose, so it's mutter l'ishtamish ben chol, so it's mutter to use it for a mundane purpose, but nishtamish ben kodesh, but once you use it for the holy purpose, asr l'ishtamish ben chol, it's asr to use it for the mundane purpose. And the point over here is that the designation alone is not enough, it's insignificant. Again, it seems to be a proof for Rava. And the Gemara says Tanoi, the Gemara says it actually is a machlokas Tanoim. This machlokas Abai and Rava, whether Hazmona milsa, is actually a machlokas Tanoim. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, tzipon azov, let's say we're talking about tefillin again, you coat them with gold, o shatola alein or shel behemet tmeya, or you use for the tefillin the hide of a non-kosher animal, so then psulos, so then it's going to be possible, it's going to be disqualified. Or behema tahora, but if you use the hide of a kosher animal for tefillin, ksheros, then it is kosher. Afal pi shelo ivdon lishmon, even though you didn't prepare that hide lishmon, you didn't prepare that hide for the sake of the mitzvah. And the Gemara's understanding, according to the simple explanation, that ibdon lishmon is the exact same idea of hazmona. And when it's saying afal pi shelo ivdon lishmon, it means you don't have to designate it because hazmona is insignificant. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, af or behema Torah, even when it comes to the hide of a kosher animal, psulos, it is going to be disqualified at sheyavdu lishmon, unless you prepare that hide at lishma, and meaning to say, again, there's a designation, and hazmona is milsa, according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, hazmona is significant. And Rashi explains, hiniach bo tefillin ba'akroi bi'alma, again, in the case of the tefillin, that first brisa was talking about when you put in tefillin, when you just did it without having a designation. The Gemara again eventually says, like Rav Chisda, that actually the brisa means if you have a designation and you put in the tefillin, as Rashi now continues, emahachi, kiss shaso tefillin, v'hiniach bo tefillin. If you have a kiss that was made, a bag that was made for tefillin, there's designation, and you place tefillin, aser laniach bo mos, then at that point in time, it is aser to put money in, seifa itzrach lemisni. Now, why would we need to teach that? That seems so obvious. The chiddush is for the seifa, lashmi'inon k'Rav Chisda, to teach like Rav Chisda, that sarbe v'lo azmanei, that let's say you use it, but you don't have that designation, lo have tashmishay mitzvah b'hachi, it's not considered tashmishay mitzvah in such a situation. And the point over here is, again, that the reish of the brisa, the first part of that brisa of kiss shaso laniach bo tefillin, it could be following Rava, that hazmana lav milsa, the designation is not significant, but what it really means, again, is we're talking about where it was designated and you used it for tefillin. That's what makes it usher. That's how Rava can understand that brisa. And Rashi continues, Tzipon Zav, again, this is where the Gemara said it's a machlokas tanoim. So the brisa said if you coat the tefillin with gold, the tefillin for tefillin, psulos is disqualified, halacha l'Moshe Misinai, that's halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Tala aleya means lashon taloi, kolomar chipon, bior behema tmeya, meaning to say you use for the tefillin, you're going to use the or behema tmeya, you use the leather, the hide of a non-kosher animal, psulos, then it's possible. We learn from Laman Tia Torah Hashem Beficha that it has to be from a kosher animal. Afagav Shalo Ivdu, and then we had this machlokas whether it has to be prepared, that hide is prepared l'shmon or not. The Tanna Kama says it does not need to be l'or zel l'shmo. It doesn't mean it does not need to be l'shmo. The hazman alav milsi, because designation is nothing anyway. V'lo ichbis lonba, and therefore we don't care about designation according to Tanna Kama. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that designation is significant. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Ravina l'Rava, Ravina said to Rava, Mi'iko duchter, is there really such a place, to ramu be'meis, that first the person has already died, va'argi beged l'meis, and only afterwards they're weaving the garments, they're weaving the burial shrouds for the mace. The question over here is, because the machlokas Abai and Rava about Hazman and Milsa was talking about exactly this case, where they're weaving these burial shrouds after the person has already died, and Ravina is asking Rava, does that actually ever happen? And the Gemara continues, Amar le said back to him, yes, that does happen, can go in Shechvi de Harpanya. It's like those who die in Harpanya. That was a place with very poor people, so they didn't have enough money. They didn't make the burial shrouds until it was absolutely necessary. Rashi explains, is there such a place where the dead body is just sitting there in disgrace? That we have to wait for them to weave the burial shrouds. It seems like you and Abaya are arguing about something that never happens. And he said it does happen. They're poor. Well, after someone dies, they would actually collect money, and then they would weave these clothing, klushim, these clothing that were very cheap type of clothing, they would do that after the death. And the Gemara continues, Darash Mereimar Darshan Hilchasa Kavase de Abaya, the halach is like Abaya, that has Mona Milsi, that it is significant, V'Rabbanan Amri, but the Rabbanan say, Hilchasa Kavase de Rava, the halach is like Rava, that has Mona Lav Milsi, designation is not significant. And the Gemara says, V'Hilchasa Kavase de Rava, the halacha is like Rava, that has Mona Lav Milsi. And the Gemara continues, Tana Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Haruge Malchus, those who are killed by the king, Nechsehen Lemelech, their property goes to the king. Haruge Bezin, those who are killed by the court, Nechsehen Leyorsh, and their property goes to their heirs. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af Haruge Malchus, even those killed by the king, Nechsehen Leyorsh, and their property goes to their heirs. And the Braisa continues, Amru Leila Rabbi Yehuda, they said to Rabbi Yehuda, the Chachamim said to Rabbi Yehuda, V'alo kvar nemar, but doesn't it already say in the Pasuk, Hinei bekerem novos asher yarad sham, Larishto, it talks about the Kerem, the vineyard of Navos, and he was put to death by the king. That was talking about being put to death by Achav, and Achav went to inherit it. And so therefore it seems that he's inheriting the property. It seems that Haruge Malchus Nichsehen Lamelech. It seems that the property does go to the king if someone is killed by the king. And the Gemara continues, Amar Lohen, so Rabbi Yehuda said back to the Chachamim, Ben Achi Aviv Haya, actually Navos was the son of the brother of his father, meaning to say Navos and Achav, they were cousins, V'roi Liyarshu Haya, and therefore they were related, so he was fit to inherit him. He wasn't inheriting, according to Rabbi Yehuda, because of the fact that he was Haruge Malchus. Rather, he was inheriting because they were related. But the Gemara continues, what does that mean? Valo Harbe Bonim Hayulo. Didn't he have a lot of sons, even if they were related, but still the sons of Navos should have inherited from him? And the Gemara continues, Amar Lahen, he said to them, meaning Rabbi Yehuda responded, Oso v'yasbonav harag. Actually, Achav, he killed, not only did he kill Navos, he killed his sons as well. That's why there were no sons to inherit. Shenemar, as it says, Im loes demei Navos ves demei bonav reisi. If I haven't seen the blood of Navos and of his sons, so therefore it indicates that his sons were killed as well. But the Gemara says v'rabbanim, but the Rabbanim will respond. That's not what the pasuk means at all. Hahu bonim haruuyin lotzeis mimeru. The pasuk means the blood of Navos and those sons who would have been born to him, the unborn sons. That's what it's referring to. But there were sons that should have inherited, and so therefore again the Rabbanan say the fact that Achav was inheriting from Navos shows that Haruge Malchus Nichsehen Lamelech. And the Gemara continues, B'shlam alaman do'amar Nichsehen Lamelech. It works out well according to the one who says that the king inherits the property by Haruge Malchus. Hainu Dechsiv, that's what's written in the pasuk Beirach Navos Elohim v'Melech. When they testified against Navos, they said that he cursed God and the king. Why are they mentioning the king? They're mentioning the king because he's going to be a Haruge Malchus, and that's why the Melech is going to inherit. But according to the one who says even someone killed by the king, his property, their property goes to the heirs, to their heirs. Why did they need to add in that he also cursed the king? Why even bother with the king? Just say that he cursed God. That would have been sufficient. But the Gemara says, but according to your reasoning, if you're asking that question, so then Elohim Lamali, so then go Elokim Lamali. The other way around, you can ask as well. Meaning to say that let's say you hold Nechsein Lamelech, and so they cursed the king, and they're mentioning that because the king is going to inherit the property. Well, why add that he cursed God? There's no reason to add that as well. Obviously, the reason to add that is to add to increase the amount of anger that the judges would have towards Navos. Hachanami. So here also lafushe riska. You didn't technically need to have both, but it's in order to increase the amount of anger that the judges would have. And the Gemara continues, it works out according to the one who says their property of the Haruge Malchus, it goes to the king. Hainu dechsiv, that's what's written in the pasuk. Vayonas Yoav al Oel Hashem. It says Yoav fled to the Oel Hashem, to the Beis HaMikdash. Vayechazek bekarnos hamizbeach. It says that he grabbed hold on the corners of the mizbeach to save himself. Uchsiv, and it's written Vayomer lo ki poamas. He says, I want to die over here. The whole point is he doesn't want to be Haruge Malchus because he doesn't want that property to go to the king. He wants it to go to his heirs. That would all make sense. But according to the one who says it doesn't matter how he's killed, if he's killed by the Melech, it still goes to his heirs. So my nafkale mina, what difference does it make to him? Why is he fleeing to the Mizbeach? And the Gemara says to that, he was doing it because he just wanted to live a little bit longer. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk in Sefer Malachim says, Vayoshe Benayoh es HaMelech Davar Lemor, that Benayoh, he gave a message to the king, to Shlomo HaMelech from Yoav, saying as follows, Kodiber Yoav v'cho Anani, so says Yoav. This is again when Yoav is running away from Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech wants to kill Yoav, and Yoav sends Shlomo HaMelech the following message. Amar Lei says to him, Zil Emolei, go say to him as follows, go tell Shlomo HaMelech as follows, Tarti lo savid b'hai gavri. You can't do two things to this person, as we'll see in a moment. You can't both kill me and also have the curses of David HaMelech come upon me. Ikatlis lei, if you're going to kill him, meaning if you're going to kill me, Yoav, kivo l'letuse delatya avach, then you have to accept upon yourself the curses that your father cursed me. V'ilo, but if not, if you don't want those curses, shavke, so then you have to let him go. Again, Yoav saying, let me go. Deleiku b'letuse delatya avach, and then he will have, meaning Yoav is saying, I will have the curses that your father cursed. And the Gemara now explains, and the Gemara now continues, the pasuk says, Vayomer lo HaMelech, then the king said, Shlomo HaMelech responded, Asei kasher diber, do as he says, ufgabo ukvarto, and you should kill him, you should bury him. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yehuda Marav. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Kol klolos shekilel David es Yoav, all of the curses that David HaMelech cursed Yoav, in the end, that's exactly what happened, as Yoav said, since Yoav was killed, Neskaimu bizarro shel David. They ended up being fulfilled with the descendants of David. Essentially, those curses did land on the descendants of David, of Shlomo HaMelech. As the Gemara now continues, Al Yikaris mi beis Yoav, the curse actually was as follows, that there should not be cut off from the house of Yoav, meaning there should always be in the house of Yoav Zav, Umitzora, Umachzik Bepelech, a Zav, and Mitzora, and Machzik Bepelech is somebody that has to hold himself up with a cane when he walks, V'nofel Becherev, and those that will fall by the sword, V'chasar Lechem, those who won't have food, those who won't have bread, those are the curses, and now the Gemara explains how those curses happened to the descendants of David HaMelech. Zav, we see Zav me Rechavim, from Rechavim. Rechavim was a Zav. Techsiv, as it's written in the Pasuk, V'hamelech Rechavim Hisam Meitz Lalos b'Merkava Lanos Yerushalayim. When it talks about Rechavim, it uses the word Merkava. Uchsiv, and it's also written V'chol HaMerkav Asher Yirkav Olav Hazav Yitma. It uses the same word Merkav Asher Yirkav Olav by a Zav, and therefore you see that Rechavim was a Zav. And Mitzora, where do we see Mitzora fulfilled? By Uziyo, we see that by Uziyo. Techsiv, as it's written, Uvechezkaso gavalibo ad lahashchis, vayimol ba'Hashem elokav, vayavol hechal Hashem, lahakter el mizbech hakatores, uchsiv, and then it's written by Uziyahu, v'atzaras, zorcha b'metzcho, that there was tzaras, and so you see from there that he had tzaras. And the Gemara continues, Machzik Bepelech. Where do we see a Machzik Bepelech? Somebody who needed assistance when he walked. May also, we see that from Asr Dechsiv, as it's written, Rakles Ziknoso, Chol al Raglav, he was sick in his legs, he wasn't able to walk properly. V'yamar Rav Yehuda Marav, and Rav Yehuda says, the Rav says, what does that mean? Shachsu Podagra, he had the disease Podagra, which is generally translated as gout. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Marzutra, Breder of Nachman, Rav Nachman, Marzutra, the son of Rav Nachman, said to Rav Nachman, Hey Chidami, what exactly is this disease? Amarle said to him, Kemachat Bivsar Achai, it feels like a needle in the flesh of the living. And the Gemara says, Mino Yada, how did he know that this is what it feels like? If you want, I could say that he actually had that disease. If you want, I could say that he learned this from his Rebbe. And if you want, I could say, Sod Hashem Lireav of Risa, that Sod Hashem Lireav, the secrets of HaKadosh Baruch Hu go to those who fear him, and so that's how Rav Nachman knew, even though he had no experience. And the Gemara continues, Nofel Becherev, and where do we see a descendants of David HaMelech, Nofel Becherev, falling by the sword? Yoshio, we see that by Yoshio, Dechsiv, it's written by Yor LaMelech Yoshio, they shot the arrows at King Yoshio. V'yamar Rav Yehuda Marav, and Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, Shasu Kal Gufo Kechvar, they made his whole body like a sieve. V'chasar Lechem, and where do we see in the descendants of David those lacking bread? Miyechonya, we see that from Yechonya, Dechsiv, as it's written, Varuchaso Aruchas Tamid, Nasnalo, he had an allowance of meals every single day. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Hainu Damri Inshi, that's what people say, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Tes Amud Aleph.